Morning podcast listeners. This is Ed Franklin with the No Limits podcast. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever been a victim of or a witness to some questionable ethics in business? Well, I got news for you. I have. And I'm going to tell you a couple stories as soon as we get started. So let's go. So thank you for joining my Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. The question about business ethics, if you ever been a witness of or a victim of, or a witness to seeing some really good ethics in business. And I tell you, I have in all those cases. And I'm going to tell you a couple stories. I was not going to do this podcast because I just want to keep everything in my life positive right now. I'm doing a podcast tomorrow with John Riley. The John Riley Project is an awesome podcast. If you've never seen it, go find it on YouTube or on Facebook or wherever. He's probably on all social media. He talks about politics, about local politics a lot. He has a podcast he does with Hacksaw Hamilton. You'll learn more about that tomorrow when we do it. But this will be a really good podcast coming up. Remember, you can always get a hold of me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com or on any of my social media platforms. So when you do listen, I hope you do listen. Please share it, whether you think it's relevant or not. It could be relevant to somebody else. So share, like, do all those things. Help me out. Try to grow this podcast a little bit. And I have some cool stuff coming up next month. So hopefully we can get this podcast to grow a little bit. So I'll tell you about it. I'll tell you a couple stories. And one of them was my first job I ever had. My first real job was working in the grocery business. And I've told you this story before, but you may not have heard the podcast, so I'll tell it now. So I graduated a year early from high school. Actually, technically I didn't, but I only had one class as a senior in high school. And I was working in the grocery business. I started when I was 16 years old. I was a box boy, they called him, or courtesy clerk, bagging groceries and all that. And on Saturday mornings, when we didn't have to go to school, there was times when I would come in and do cardboard. And what that took in is I would gather all the cardboard from the boxes that the night crew were discarding. I would crush them, take them out to a baler, put them in the baler, and make these big bales of cardboard. So I got to know these guys in the night crew, and they all made a little bit more money than the rest of the store because they worked premium hours and things like that. And it was a very fun atmosphere, and it was just a fun, looked like a fun job for me to do. And plus, it could get me money, and that's all I really wanted, right? I wanted to fix up my cars, my trucks, whatever I had at the time. So I was working. I got on the night crew eventually after I got out of high school, because I could work nights, and we used to work maybe 10 to 6:30 or midnight to 8:30, something like that. This is back in the day when the stores used to open at normal times, like at 9 o'clock and close at 10. On the weekends, they closed even earlier and opened a little bit later, actually. So after a couple of years working on a night crew, I got to be very good friends with all the night crew employees, the managers, things like that. And I had a good friend of mine that was a manager. And at times, vendors like Pepsi or Budweiser or Coke or somebody would bring in these really elaborate displays, and they'd have surfboards and all these. You've probably seen them in stores when you go into the grocery store, and they have these really cool displays. Well, Budweiser had brought in this display of the Clydesdales with the pulling the carriage, and it was enormous. It was probably 10 feet long, and it lit up, and it was just really cool. Like it'd be totally cool to have in a man cave or a gal cave, whatever they call them. And they had brought this display in. They did their thing, and the display ended up missing. The Budweiser guys didn't care. They were this wasn't something they were going to use again. And the manager, my direct manager, had taken the display and put it upstairs so he could take it home at another time. I thought this was all good. It's all on the up and up. And lo and behold, the store manager came to me and asked me if I knew where the display went. And I did. And I told him no, I didn't at the time. I lied to him. And I remember I went to the phone that was on the wall. Millennials, ask your mom. And I called my mom and said, Mom, this just happened. What do I do? I kind of feel bad. I had to lie to this guy, or I didn't have to, but I did. And And the manager had told me, look, if you know something, no one's going to get in trouble. I just want to know where the display went for my own knowledge. And I believed him. And so I went back to him and said, look, Mr. Manager, I'm not going to tell you what his name was. It's a funny name, but I'm not going to tell you. And I told him I knew where it was, and it was upstairs. And Ted was a friend of mine that was the manager, had taken the display because Budweiser had given it to him. That's what I understood happened. Well, the manager lied to me. The store manager lied to me and ended up demoting my friend. And he might have even transferred him to another store, but I remember he got demoted, and it kind of came back to me, and it was a lot of pressure. I mean, he was mad at me, right? He felt like betrayed or whatever. The ethical part that I didn't like, or the lack of ethics, is that this manager lied to me to get me to tell him something and to kind of narc on my friend. And I started to kind of get the idea that you got to be careful who you're talking to, what you say to people. I mean, I was a kid at the time. I just thought you told the truth, and that's how everything was, right? I mean, keep in mind, I was a kid. I only missed one day of high school in 4 years, and the day I missed, I got a ticket on my skateboard, and my dad had to take me to court for this ticket. Well, at the same time, we went and got my driver's permit at the DMV and went and had lunch with my mom and dad. It's the only day I missed in high school in uh, in all 4 years. So I was just trying to be honest. A few years later, I went to work for Pepsi, and I went to work in the vending department. So we filled vending machines. And let me back up for a second. The store I worked for was Food Basket. It was Lucky Stores. Incredible company to work for. Very nice people. Always got my paycheck. Never a problem. Didn't get hassled about anything. As long as you worked hard and got to work on time and everything was good. So on the good side of things, great company. Probably not what that manager did was not Lucky's policy, but it's what happened. It was just who he was. And my God, he was probably in his 60s at the time, and I was, 20. So he came from a whole different generation than I did. So anyway, so I go to work for Pepsi, and I'm in the vending area. So what I'm doing is filling vending machines in a relief situation. So if someone was sick, or I didn't have my own route, so I would just cover for guys that were off. And I ended up getting a route actually in downtown. But the story I want to tell you is they called this meeting for all the employees at Pepsi. There was probably 350 people. I don't even know how many there were. There's a lot. And they're introducing the new general manager to our plant. I worked in San Diego plant. It was a franchise. The gentleman who owned it owned six franchises in California. And they were introducing a new general manager. We had one, and then he was introducing him. So he's telling us about him and his experience and all this, rah rah siskumba stuff. And all of a sudden, the meeting gets interrupted. And like I said, there's like 300 of us, 350 sitting in this big, like, sales room area. And someone answers the door, and a police officer walks in, and he's with an old gentleman, had a beard, and he looked homeless to me. And he walks in, and the police officer takes this old man with the human resources director and the general manager, and they go into the front offices. So we're all sitting there. We don't know what happened. Maybe there was an accident outside, or, maybe this guy got caught stealing. I don't know. We don't know what happened. We just know there's a cop and there's an old man, and they all go in the front office. And maybe 10 minutes later, they come in and they call four of the drivers in from this meeting. They call them into the front office. So they all walk out. It was all like the popular guys, like the coolest guy, like high school. It was the coolest guys. And when they came back out, they had no shirts on because we all wore uniforms. We had Pepsi shirts on, and all four of these drivers were handcuffed. And we're freaking out. This is my second job I've ever had. I've only been there a week or two. I just got married. My wife's I think she might have been pregnant by then. I don't even know, but I'm freaking out at this because I'm like, what the hell? I just left Lucky Stores. It was this great place to work. And now I'm here at Pepsi, and they're arresting four of the drivers. Come to find out, in addition to selling Pepsi off of their trucks, they were selling some other powdered substances, and they kind of ran a sting on these drivers and popped all four of them. So they all got arrested. They all lost their jobs. The ethical situation with that, in my eyes, is that that might not have been the best timing of how to handle a situation. It was embarrassing for the people, and I know they did something wrong, but I don't know if they needed to embarrass them. There was 100 other ways to do it, probably. And on top of that, I'm sure the new general manager knew this was going to happen, but if he didn't, kind of embarrassing for him too, right? This is his first day at work, and this is how it starts. Again, Pepsi was a great place to work. It was fun. I did a lot of different jobs there, and I had a good time, and it led me into a traveling sales career. So it was all good, and for the most part, there was all good ethics going on, right? All moral stuff. They weren't. Everybody was getting paid. We were a part of the Teamsters union, and we cooperated with the Teamsters. And when I got out of management, I had to cooperate with the Teamsters, with my employees, because they were union guys, and I was not any longer. But again, just a funny story. When you're 24 years old and I'm new to everything, and here I go to this store and four guys get arrested. It was quite a show. Um, some other stories I have. I tell you, I was in the car business for about a minute, and I sold cabs and chassis. So when you see a truck with a service body on it, that was sold as just the cab, engine, and a frame, and then we would sell the service bodies to go on the back. It was not your typical car sales situation. It was owners of companies and that, and they were looking for a specific truck. I would get that for them, then we'd outfit the back of the truck, or it could be a van where we put racks on it or toolboxes in it. And I'll give you just a quick lesson if you don't know, and you probably do know this. When you sell a car, and like I said, our kind of costs were fixed, right? We just did $500 over invoice, and then so the people that were buying it would either finance it or pay cash or whatever they decided to do. Well, if they wanted to finance it, we'd have to run their credit, and we would shop. Not me, the finance guy would shop lenders to give them a rate. So let's just, for example, say they got him bought at 5%, right? They got a lender that's going to sell him the car at 5% interest rate. Generally, when that would happen, we would add a percent to it. It's a sales kind of a commission thing since we did all this legwork, and we would get paid 1% of that total. So if the truck was, you know, $20,000, we'd get an extra $200 on our commission, plus whatever we made on the service body. And I'm not saying that every car dealer is like this. I just remember my memories just tell me this is what used to happen. And everyone was happy. The guy left, had his payment. Everybody's good. We got the truck body built for. We sent it to the factory. It came back with the body on it. He went out and made his money. And but the guys I worked with, a couple of them were kind of old school car salespeople, and I never understood why it had to be greasy. Like I said, what I was doing was pretty straightforward. It was just selling a product, and then we'd add a product to it, and we'd make a commission off of that. And we'd do all those legwork, right? We'd order the service body, we'd talk to the company that installed the service body, we'd do all that stuff. One time, another salesman in our department, this guy comes in, and the guy's kind of a little nervous, kind of a little, kind of a little frantic, and he's like, "Look, I really need a truck for my business. I got all this business, and I can't." But he says, "But my credit's really bad." And I mean, it's terrible. I just had some problems. Maybe it's successful. I don't know what the problem was, but he was definitely having some financial issues and he had real bad credit. So he finds a truck he wants. They take it to finance. They get him bought at like 7%, right? Which is at the time it was pretty high. 7.5%, 8% it was pretty high at the time. And the manager of my department and the other salesman, knowing that this guy was already frantic, which that was his first mistake, is letting a sales guy know that he's in trouble. They go back to him with like a 15% interest rate. And he's fine with that. He's like, okay, cool. I just got to get a truck. I don't care how much it costs. I'm making money. I just got to pay for it. Now, keep in mind they got him bought at like seven, so now he's paying seven. They're charging him seven extra points. So now on that $20,000 truck, they're getting $1,400, not the 200 that we would get when we had 1%. Greasy, unethical. They could have went to the guy and maybe put 2 points on, but to put 7 or 8 points on this truck, and the thing that really irritated me is they kind of celebrated it. They kind of like, hey, look, we got one over on this guy, and I made all this money on this deal, and I'm like, man, this is not the shit I signed up for. This was unethical at best. I mean, it wasn't even at best. It was unethical. They should not have done that to this poor man. And this guy's trying to run a job. I mean, there'd be times I remember I had to deliver a truck one time. The guy gives me an address. I get in the truck. I get a salesman to follow me. Ends up being a strip club in Kearney Mesa. And I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. So I go in. The guy sees me because he knew me from the dealership. He comes outside. The guy's been drinking. I can tell he's been drinking. I can smell it on his breath. I said, look, dude, I can't deliver this truck to you right now. He says, oh, no, it's all right. I'll sign off on it. I said, no, because you've been drinking and if something happens and I knowingly knew you were drinking and signed off on that. And he finally just said, okay, Ed, I appreciate it. I understand that. So I took the truck back and he picked it up the next day. Good ethical decision. I didn't want to put him in a bad spot, and I obviously didn't want to put me in a bad spot. I mean, they could have sued the dealership and everybody else. Last car dealership question or story. Once a month on a Saturday, we had to work retail because we were in a commercial department, and then once a month we had to work retail. 90% of the time, concrete was like being sold like going crazy. Every concrete contractor or anybody that knew anything about concrete was selling concrete like mad. They were coming in and just dropping checks for these trucks, and it was great. I mean, it was great business because if a concrete guy came in, he was leaving, and it was always an easy deal. One Saturday, and what else the concrete guys would do? They would send their wives in, tell them, look, show her a car. I don't care what she wants, and it was usually a Suburban. I'll pay full MSRP. I don't care. I don't want to haggle. Just tell me what. Send me an invoice. I'll send you a check. We're done. And that happened 3 or 4 times. And these beautiful women would come in, and as soon as you got them in the truck, and they smelled that new interior, they're like, "Yep, this is what I want." Call the guy, give him an invoice, and boom. So normally retail was pretty slick for us. But one day, this couple came in, a young couple, and they had a baby, and the girl was pregnant. And they're in their 20s, probably. They came in a little Toyota pickup back in the day when there were no extra cabs. And so they were having to have the husband drive, the wife sit in the middle, and the kid in the car seat. Very tight. But I mean, I was poor when I was having kids. They could do it. And they wanted to buy a little SUV. Again, bad credit. They didn't have a lot of equity in the truck, so down payment wise, they were going to be real short on that. And we sat down you guys have all done this if you bought a car, you sit down in the showroom at a table, and I'm like, look, at this point, I was married to kids, so we had all 8 kids. They were young, they were all under 18 probably. And so I'm talking to these kids that are, you know, older than my kids, but not very much. And I said, look, here's let me just make a suggestion to you. She's not due yet. She's still got about 6 months, before she's going to have this baby. Why don't you wait a few months, get some more equity in the truck, try to raise some more money for a down payment, get your credit straightened out. So when you do come back and buy a little SUV, you're in a better position. You're not going to pay too much for the car. They're saying, you know what, that's super nice of you. We really appreciate it. And I said, look, call me back and I'll get you the right people and we'll get you a good deal on this car. You're going to get yourself in a bind right now, and I don't want you to do that. I had already been through that in my life. I don't want them to do that. So I go walk back upstairs to my office, and the sales manager runs out and grabs these kids before they get into the truck. And I see them walking back into the dealership. I went home that day, and the next day I came in, the sales manager calls me to his office and says, look, why did you let that client walk out of here yesterday? I said, I just think it was a bad deal for them. I don't think it was fair to do that to these kids And look, they're going to probably buy a car from us anyway. Maybe they'll go somewhere else, but with a good conscience, I could not sell them something and get them in a bind financially. So they reprimanded me and almost got fired from that. I ended up quitting a couple days later. And so here's what happened. They came in and bought this little $12,000 car, little, I don't even know what the hell it was called. It was this little shitbox SUV, enough room for their little family. And they ended up paying $12,000. At the end of their loan cycle, at the end of, however many years they were going to pay $32,000 for this car. A $12,000 car was going to cost them $32,000. They didn't even get it because they were young and they didn't have the experience. And I was so angry about that. I called Kit from work one day and said, I'm done. I can't. This is I can't do this. Now, is every car dealership crooks? Of course not. I know a lot of people in the car business that are very nice people. I'm not saying they're taking advantage of. I purchased cars and felt very comfortable with the deal. I understood the deal because I had sold cars in the past, and I've only paid cash for one car in my life. The rest I've always financed, and I always felt comfortable with that. It was no big deal. No one was trying to do anything unethical to me. And but this was just too much. And when you're making decisions like that based on and these poor young kids, I don't know what ended up happening. I mean, they could have hit the lottery and paid it off in a week, but more than likely that wasn't the case, and they had to live with this debt. And it just was the wrong thing to do. And some salespeople in the car dealership come from that old school thing. I mean, the stories I would hear about some of the unethical things. And like I said, I'm not saying every car dealer's like that. I know some people. I know people that own car dealerships that I don't think would ever have done that to somebody. They were very nice. In fact, one guy, a friend of mine I went to high school with, he helped me buy or helped my daughter buy her car, and he was very fair, and I knew the deal, and it was good. But this is how the car dealerships got that reputation. After that job, I went into selling exhaust fans, louvers, dampers, fire smoke dampers, sound attenuators, sound enclosures, all this in the HVAC business. Sold to big contractors, Pac Rim, AO Reed, ICS, University Mechanical, all those guys. And very good business to be in. All the contractors are very ethical. My company had done something unethical, I thought later, but I'm not going to tell that story. But I'll tell you one story that happened to me in that business. I got this job with a very large contractor in San Diego who's not even in San Diego anymore, but they're all over the US and they're well over $1 billion now. And what we would do is I would go to look at plans, I would take off all the products that we sold, put together a bid, send it back, and hope I get the job. And I would work with a project manager on that, and they would negotiate costs and things like that. So I get this job, and it's a good job. It's China Lake, the weapons station up there. I'm selling 96 lab exhaust fans. In 2007, I sold more lab exhaust fans than anybody in the world. And I had another job with 96 lab exhaust fans on it. I mean, I was out of my head. And I'll tell you one side story to this. So I get the job. We had to prepare submittals, which is basically tells everything about the equipment so the engineers can look at it and say, yes, that's what we want. It performs in the correct parameters that we need it to. It does everything we need it to do. So yes, they bless off on it. So I get a PO for 96 fans. Huge job. The first order that goes in, I get a call from the project manager, and she says, "Hey Ed, we have a problem." And I said, "What's the problem?" She says, "The driver is at the front gate at 29 Palms, and he will not get out of the truck. They needed to search his truck before he goes in. This is a weapons station, high security stuff." And she goes, "What do we want? What do you want us to do?" And jokingly, I said, "I'd shoot him," because they said they had M16 Marines surrounding this guy, dogs, everything, wanting to get this guy out of the truck, and he refused to get out. So I said, "I'll just shoot him." And I was kidding, of course. What ended up happening is he ended up backing the trailer out, parking it, dropping it off down the street, and another tractor came in and brought it in. Ultimately, the gentleman had a pistol in his truck, and it wasn't registered or whatever the reason was. You weren't allowed to bring weapons into 29 Palms. So they got the load, got it installed, got all those things. That's 24 fans. I'm still waiting for an order for 72 fans. The job's going on and on and on, and I'm like, and I don't know why they're waiting so long to do this. So I call the contractor and talked to this gal that was the project manager and said, "Hey, I really need to know when you're going to order these fans so they can start getting them in production." And she says, "You know what? We went with somebody else." I said, "You went with somebody else? I was approved for the fans, and I have a PO. I have all that stuff." She says, "Yeah, well, we canceled that part of the PO, so you got the 24 fans. We're giving it to somebody else." Well, it wasn't because of the delivery, but I did find out why it was. This woman was dating my competitor, and they had both worked for each other at this contractor. I don't know if I said who the contractor was. I won't say it again. But so their relationship was progressing. So she let him submit on the other 72 fans, and she gave him a PO for the other 72 fans. Now that was a shitty thing to do. That was completely unethical. Wasn't right. I went back to the owner of our company and said, we need to argue this, right? We need this is He says, "Well, we can't because it's this company and they're too big and we can't." And I was so pissed because it was a lot of money in my pocket. And it was and I won the job. This guy did not win the job. Well, he won it, but differently than I did, apparently. And yeah, I lost his 72 fans order because she was dating my competitor, and that is just a shitty thing to do. Now, if I was a contractor and I would have found out, I would have fired her because she pulled something on us that she shouldn't have been allowed to do. And we were a good, honest supplier, and they were a reputable contractor, and things like that shouldn't happen. But I was never allowed to go back and tell anybody really what happened. And they got married and had a couple of kids, and actually got divorced. And I'm not happy about that. I'm just saying these are the kind of things that happen in businesses, and how it can affect people. Now, like I said, the company I was working for, super upstanding. Most of the I think all the contractors I worked with were, as far as I know, were very good. I had an instance with a contractor who, and this happened a lot, where they call you up and say, "I'm really behind on this job. I estimated it wrong or whatever. I need some help on the pricing." Well, after being in sales this many years, I would never normally do that. But I knew this guy, I knew him for a long time, and I felt like he was a good guy. And when he says, "And look, I'll take care of you at another time," right? And I said, "Okay." It never usually happened. I'll tell you, maybe 5, 6 weeks after that job, this guy calls me and says, "Ed, I have a new job for you. This is what's on the plans. Mark it up another 20 or 30%, and that will take care of you did me a favor before." And I was like elated. I loved this guy. He was such a good, he was honest, right? And listen, no, I love helping people out. Everybody loves people helping out. I've never worked for a nonprofit that sold a product there's a line in Joe Dirt about, "Listen, we're not UNICEF here. We're not a nonprofit. We're here to make money." But that was encouraging to me that there are people out there that are good like that. And like I said, I don't want to be negative about this podcast, but there's some ethical stuff going on in our government right now and a lot of businesses. And I think in this job search, there's a lot of unethical things. Inevitably, if I put a note out on LinkedIn asking my friends to help me, I will get 3 or 4 people friending me or asking me to connect. And once they do, and you send them their resume or they see your resume on LinkedIn, they'll say, "Well, you know what? I have this friend that works for Fiverr, and they can fix your resume so you get a lot more information." And it always says they're like talent acquisition things, and they may email me at like 9 o'clock at night from New York, and I'm like, no one's working at 12. at midnight. So I would go to their connection list and they have like 2 or 3 connections. So lo and behold, this starts getting talked about on LinkedIn. These are scammers that are trying to get me to give them my payment information for this so-called resume redo, and then they have you, right? So then they got you, and it's rampant right now. I just was reading 3 things this morning, 3 different posts where they're coming out and they're doing this, and it's really the worst part about it is, we're all looking for work. We're all let down in the dumps, right? We're getting ghosted by employers. We're getting all these things that are happening. And on top of that, we have to worry about getting scammed out of money because I don't know if they're from another country, whoever's doing the scamming is ridiculous. And yeah, it's disheartening at best. Look at our government right now. In the last 10, 15 years, the insider trading going on, all the corruption going on right out in front of the open. When we were growing up, those are entities we should have been looking to encourage us to have good ethics and to do the right thing. And here, lo and behold, and I don't care what side of the party you're on, which party you align yourself with, they're all unethical. They're all doing things, when a senator or something goes and makes $150,000 a year, and 4 years later they're worth $29 million. There's something wrong. So you got to keep yourself in check, man. You got to be making those right decisions out there and watching for these unethical practices. I'm on social media almost all day posting things, and I'm getting ads, constant ads. And all you have to do is this, and you can make $9,000 a day, and this and that and that and this. Do you know anybody that makes $9,000 a day? Do you live around anybody? When I was growing up, and Amway was a big deal. Did you ever know an Amway distributor that made any money? You might. I didn't. I'd go to the meetings. I'd meet people that did it, but they never got anywhere with it. They might make a couple dollars here and there. It wasn't growing like they thought. So these with AI, a lot of these people are the Amway distributors of back in the day, the bad ones. And I constantly get these things. I mean, I'm talking 40 a day come up on my feed where you can make money, and it'll be a guy on a farm out there with 8 teeth, and he's telling you that you can make $900 a day, and apparently he's not putting it to his dental work. So I don't know. Ethics in business is a tough one. Ethics in anything is a tough one. We have churches that are unethical. Let me rephrase that. We have people in churches that are unethical. The church generally isn't, but there's people that take advantage of all kinds of different things. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. It's not sexy. I have more stories I could tell you about what I witnessed, but it's not important. I got the point across. I'm going to be working for and doing the ethical things when I'm out there, and be honest with people. A big deal in sales is being honest, right? People can see through you. Um, you have to be able to give good, honest answers. Consumers are much more aware of what's going on these days. They have a lot more access to information than they did, 30, 40 years ago. So, I mean, keep your head up and watch for these scams, because um, I went to a senior. It was a senior function. It wasn't all seniors in there. It was in that senior realm in business. And the district attorney from San Diego was on a Zoom call, and he was telling us about all these scams that are going down, and they're targeted towards seniors generally. And a lot of the stuff goes unreported because the senior's embarrassed. What I did not know is that millennials are getting scammed at the same rate, and they don't ever tell anybody because they feel like, oh, that was a stupid mistake. I can rebuild. But a senior can't always rebuild if they've taken all their life savings or whatever and they're on a limited income. So it's not age wise. It's not just seniors getting scammed. Everybody's trying to scam someone at some point. I get emails constantly that says your payment declined for this or that, and I didn't order anything. I get texts on a regular basis, and I know you do too, and you get phone calls and you get all that stuff. Just be aware, ask questions. If you're um, concerned, go online and ask, does Apple text you if there's a problem? No, they don't. But I've gotten texts, or look at the email it's coming from. It'll never be the email from Amazon or Apple or whoever. It's always some weird email. There's people sitting in rooms, millions of people sitting in rooms all around the world, trying to get your money, trying to scam you. So this is all about ethics, doing the right thing. Obviously, these scammers have zero ethics. If they put all this effort into good things, they'd probably have great lives and be wealthy and all that stuff. But we know that's not the case. Some people just would rather steal from you and make it and do it easier. So anyway, I'm doing a podcast with John Riley tomorrow. I don't know if I mentioned that in the beginning. John Riley Project is a great podcast. He talks a lot about Poway politics. He talks about politics nationally, globally, but he focuses sometimes on Poway politics. He also has a show he does with Hacksaw Hamilton, which you've got to be my age to know who Hacksaw is. Hacksaw was a sportscaster in San Diego, still is, and he's very popular. He used to be on Channel 8, I believe, years ago. And so you can look out for his podcast with Hacksaw too. But listening to this podcast, listening to the podcast that we're going to put out probably on Monday with John Riley. I hope you guys have a fabulous weekend. Summer's kicking off. A lot of you guys, your kids are getting out of school. Teach them ethics. They don't teach those in school anymore. They used to teach us. And look, I appreciate you listening to my podcast. When you hear this, please like, share, subscribe, do whatever you can. I'm trying my best to grow this, and I know with your help we can do that. Like I said, I got some good things coming up. You can always contact me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com or on any of my social media platforms. I always appreciate you listening. If you want to be a guest or you have a good guest, I'm looking for celebrity guests. Celebrity guests will help me grow my podcast. And I only need 10 or 15 minutes of their time. And it'll never be a negative podcast. It'll always be about positivity, maybe how they became successful, maybe their childhood or whatever. So I'm not looking to denigrate anybody out there. And so if they're worried about that, that would not be the case. We would talk about very positive and uplifting things. Thank you for listening to my podcast, and keep sharing and helping me out. Have a great weekend.